Which I also just love saying pink opaque. There's something about that mouth thing.
What a
The mouth
pleasure to
feel.
listen to.
Yes.
Yeah, pink opaque. Pink
opaque. That mouth
It's
feel
all
is a good
together.
mouth feel.
All
Okay.
together.
Pink opaque.
Opaque.
Oh man, those poppin' peas. Oh,
Those
And
plosives.
Those
Ooh.
plosives on my plips.
Yes.
Blam.
I just love it.
Hello. Do you want to play a game?
What's your favorite scary movie?
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
I see dead people.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Here's Johnny.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Welcome to Talking Horror with Jamie and Nikisha.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Nikisha, and this is Talking Horror with Jamie.
And Nikisha.
Where we share our love for all things scary and talk horror through the lens of human behavior. Welcome, everyone. Also, happy Pride. We're still knee deep in it and about to get into what?
Every time you say knee deep in pride, it makes me laugh.
I love it. We're obsessed with it. Inclusion over here, okay? And also, we're about to enter cancer season.
Mm-hmm.
So that's exciting as well.
Get ready, everyone. For
Jamie and I are
all of our
Cancer, so
energies.
get ready for our insufferable energy.
Can't wait.
Can't wait. Fun times. Lots of things to celebrate. But today, along the lines of Pride, we are talking about the 2024 psychological horror drama, I Saw the TV Glow. I had a little accent there. I saw the TV glow.
I saw it.
I saw it. I saw it. Now, this film was written and directed by a one Jane Schunbrunn. They, them pronouns, everyone. And it stars Justice Smith, who I'm quickly becoming obsessed with. Little cutie of a person. And he is. I think he's just, I just want to, you know those people, you see them and you just want to pinch their cheeks? That's how I feel about Justice Smith.
But he's also very memorable in all of the films that I've seen him in over the past couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, we'll talk about it, and this is no different from memorable.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I agree. But it's not just him in this. It also stars Bridget Lundy Payne, also they, them pronouns.
I love them. I think that they are a spectacular actor and performer. I just wanted to get that out up front.
Yeah, what else have you seen them in?
Brian was talking about them in the recent car ride.
He was.
Obsessed.
Specifically the Netflix TV show Atypical. They play the older sister of the main character who is figuring out who their identity in that show. And it's spectacular. The character, she goes through a lot, and they really do a great job of grounding it. And I think they do that in this as well. But we'll get to that. Sorry, I just jumped in.
Yeah. No, that's great. And you said this is on Netflix?
Yeah, Atypical is on Netflix. It's complete as well.
Okay. Fantastic. I'll have to add that to my list because I enjoyed their performance as well. So heavy spoilers for I Saw the TV Glow, and Jamie, hit us with those trigger warnings.
If you ever watched like creepy, scary shows as a kid, and were really freaked out by them, this might be triggering for you.
Yes.
It gave me a lot of like early Nickelodeon, or even more so like Nick at Night vibes, where I was like, "Ooh, this is a little too much for me. I don't know if I can handle this."
Obsessed.
So, speaking of that, you know what I just read? That the neighbor 1 and neighbor 2 in this, uncredited sort of, are Pete and Pete, are Danny Tamborelli and the other guy who played the older Pete.
Really?
That's what Wikipedia says.
Now I need to go back and look at that.
Michael C.
What?
Morona and Danny Tamborelli played neighbor 1 and neighbor 2.
There's no way that I missed Pete or Pete.
They must be bad. We'd have to watch it again. I didn't catch that either. But it must be like quick. it must be like quick background characters or so. I don't know. I'll see what I can find. But because you said that, I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, no, that's important. That hits
It is.
on what I feel like is happening here.
Yes.
But it's like like in terms of trigger warnings, there's a lot of just like weird, disturbing imagery. I think also, like, as an aside, we should have a conversation about like where does this fall in terms of horror?
For sure.
But I do think that there's a lot of like unsettling imagery. I think there's references to like familial abuse and like familial tension. That's not like explicit. There's like the rapid aging, I think, is also really disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I would also say that like a lot of this movie centers on like a trans experience. Like
Mm-hmm.
this film serves as an allegory, but I think within that too can come with like a lot of disturbing and like uncomfortable realizations, because I think that's what this entire movie is. So like that might feel like triggering or disturbing, or it might feel like the opposite. So I say that to say I can't speak to what might trigger you, but I'm putting it out there just in case.
Absolutely. Also, there's a parent that passes from
Yes.
cancer.
Is
Yeah.
I
They
want to
never
say
distinctly
yes.
say, but I'm
Okay.
going to go with the big
Yeah.
yes there.
Yeah.
She's terminally ill and then she
Yes.
passes away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, there is a lot to get into it because, like Jamie mentioned, this all is allegory heavy. So I am excited to hear you guys' opinions about it because this is all of our first time watching it. But producer Brian, can you give us some words, please?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Hi, YouTube. We're on YouTube. So if you're listening to us in your ears, you can also listen to us with your eyes. Or if you're listening to us with your eyes, you can listen to us with your ears. Go out to find us wherever you get podcasts. You can also find us on social media at Talk Horror Pod. At Talk Horror Pod on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. Find us there. And then this whole month we're celebrating Pride. So I think all of, if not most of our movies this month intertwine thematically with that. So definitely listen. I think next week we're doing Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. If you were interested in
Can't
that.
believe we have not discussed this film
Well,
yet, but
we were going to, and then for some reason we bumped it. I don't remember why, and we just never got back to it. But we're bumping
How
it
dare
back. We're
us.
such
Truly, how dare
idiots.
us?
We're so dumb.
That's fine.
Yeah, we did Slay. I saw the TV Glow today. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies to close out Pride, and then we'll go into A Quiet Place Day 1 when that comes out fresh and new.
Which so excited because there's so many people who've texted me and said, "When are you going to go see this?
Yeah.
I want to go see it with you." So we're going to have like a movie party for this.
Party.
And then we're headed into the woods. We're doing Cabin in the Woods, The Ritual, and finally The Village. And then we're gonna do some more M. Night Shyamalan because we're excited for Trap to come out. And we'll eventually get to The Watchers. The Watcher.
It's always a trap.
Yeah, it's a trap. Cool. So just giving you a heads up of what's down the pike.
Fantastical. Well, let's get into it. Actually, have you guys watched anything new this week?
I saw the TV Glow.
God.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Got it. Yes. Fantastic. Well, then let's just talk about it. Let's get into it. There's a lot to discuss here, but we need as I spit on my computer, we need a 2-minute plot summary of this.
Yeah, I'll try.
Yeah.
What's the plot?
You got this. We believe in you.
We
All
do.
Right. Producer Brian, you
Okay.
have 2 minutes on the clock to tell us about what you saw when you saw the TV Glow.
All right.
Ready, steady, go.
Okay, so it's 1996. We see a young Owen who's in 7th grade being a ninth grader named Maddie. They bond over a book she's reading about episodes of The Pink Opaque. The Pink Opaque is a 90s TV show that ran for 5 seasons, and it's supposed to be in the vein of like a Nick at Night, a SNICK type of TV show, like a Are You Afraid of the Dark or The Tomorrow People, Pete and Pete vibes, something like that. It's about two girls who have a psychic connection to take down Mr. Melancholy, the bad guy. Anyway, these two characters start to bond over watching this TV show, and it also overlaps with the fact that Owen is sneaking out at night to join Maddie at her house to watch it, and then they have these like very brief, deep conversations about who they are, figuring out who they are. Maddie wants to leave. Maddie leaves town. All the while, Owen's mother is dying of cancer. His father is a bit they never say abusive, but he definitely is like a force, if you will, in the house, played by Limp Bizkit, Fred Durst. And anyway, Maddie leaves and disappears completely, and then he lives his life. But there's something missing. He feels very sad. Maddie comes back and basically says, like, I found a new life for myself. You are trapped. Mr. Melancholy has trapped you in this time loop. You are stuck here. This is not reality. We are the characters from The Pink Opaque. Like, we are trapped here. We are both buried alive. We need to bury ourselves alive here to find our new bodies. He turns Maddie down, and then Maddie goes away and disappears. And then he realizes that the Pink Opaque is not what he remembered it to be. And he sees the TV glow inside of him, but he still decides, as he's rapidly aging, to just live the lie that he knows that he's living in at that point.
Yeah. I mean, that's great.
And that's the plot.
That is it. I mean, with such a visual movie, it is hard to, but it's a great explanation of what it is.
Thank you.
Great. So let's get into it with our first segment, likes and gripes.
And now our likes and gripes.
Brian or Jamie, which one would you like to go first?
I'll go first.
Great. Go ahead.
Go for it.
I fucking loved this movie. This is the best movie I've seen all year by far.
Obsessed.
I can't stop thinking about it. I think the performances are amazing. This movie is deeply in my wheelhouse. I understand that this is a vibe, this movie, but this movie is a visual pleasure. It is a emotional vibe. It is an allegory on an allegory on an allegory. It is so well directed and acted and thought out, and it never stressed me out in a way where I was trying to figure out what it was about. It balances the line of not hitting you over the head with this message and really being an interesting character study, while 1,010,000,000% feeding and celebrating while questioning the nostalgia that we have for a very specific mid-90s time. Mm-hmm. And I just thought everything about this movie was an absolute treat. My likes, every 90s reference, like the Fruitopia machine, like the parachute in the gym
at the school,
playing MASH. It was just a full vibe. It gave me Tomorrow People vibes, if you remember that from Nickelodeon back in the day. It takes,
that was before our time.
Yeah, maybe.
Old man.
It takes memories and nostalgia very seriously. My little emo heart just like exploded every time Maddie said something. When you think she goes to bed, but she's still talking to Owen on the stairs. This is a perfect latchkey. This is like a wonderful 90s latchkey kid movie in some ways. I just thought, I personally believe, and I have very vivid memories of sitting in the dark and the TV glow, literally, like that's the only light in the room. Whether it's my sister watching it or my dad or my mom or me, I just think this movie captured that so incredibly well, cinematography wise, and from the script. Like there's Buffy the Vampire Slayer references, and like, and it just was. I loved it so much. Everything felt like a weird choice in this movie, and it was wonderful. Um, the high school was called Void High School, and I just think that the allegory of whether you're going specifically trans or if you're just going for figuring out who you are and
Yeah.
whether you have the ability to deny it or accept it, was so well done. And I think it is a deeply sad movie, which I love. I love a good sad movie, but I also think it's deeply hopeful because there's that moment at the end of the film where Maddie is in the street kind of walking away, and the chalk drawings on the street says like there is still time. And I think there's a message of hope in this. And I think that ending this movie, first of all, Maddie's speech in the planet in the blow up planetarium is an incredible feat of acting and character work. And I think that ending this movie with him seeing what he is inside and being embarrassed that the show that he remembered and loved wasn't the same, which I can totally empathize with. And then opening himself up and seeing the TV glow, seeing the pink opaque inside of him, and still choosing to close it up and live the life of him being trapped. And then I believe that the ending is when he's screaming at the like
birthday party?
funplex and everyone's like frozen. I don't think anyone hears him. That's all happening inside of his head, and that's all happening inside of him. And when he goes to the bathroom freaking out, like they're knocking on the door, you know, wondering like what's going on. But when he's apologizing to people at the end, that's just him projecting how he thinks other people see him as weird. I think I just think all of that was just like so well done. I just like, and Jamie and I had a long conversation the other day about like when does he get trapped, and she made the excellent point of the TV commercial, because that's what's in the Globe. When
Mr. Melancholy is like doing the whole evil speech that like
Yeah,
all the bad
during
guys
the
do,
finale.
and he's holding the snow globe that Maddie referenced early. I think earlier she like she talks to him about like, does it ever feel like you're like kind of stuck in a snow globe or like experiencing the world as a snow globe? Because I think that's referencing Mr. Melancholy actually holding the snow globe of that experience in front of him.
Yeah, I loved all of the practical effects, like the ice cream man and all of that stuff. I just think that this movie fires on all cylinders. I cannot wait to watch Jane Schoenbrun's movie before this. We're all going to the World's Fair. I am just deeply in love with this movie and everything that it represents and what it's trying to do. This is so in my wheelhouse of psychological horror. Like I just, even, you know, in terms of like from a viewer's perspective, I just thought this worked on all levels. Here are my gripes. My gripes are, I don't think that a mom would leave until the kid went inside. I did not like the time jumps of how he didn't look his age. However, all of those gripes went, and there are a lot of misaccents in this movie where they're like TV Glow and Loon Juice, and it was very weird. And then when they told us that time is different and things are weird and nothing feels right, it was all of those gripes went away. Everything that made me feel uncomfortable and weird in this movie was a specific choice, and that blew my mind. And they're just little, it was not the movie like being like setting it up like, you know, like in the movies where it's just like where it's like the newspaper's like, well, I guess the nuclear war is starting, you know, like stuff like whoa, oh, there's a serial killer on the loose, but that doesn't have anything to do with our story, but it does. Like all the stuff that was incorporated in here was in the fabric of this film. Oh, when he's narrating, he like starts narrating halfway through the movie, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And then all of it like came together, and I just like, that made me so thrilled and happy. I love zoos because zoos are deeply sad and super cool at the same time. And I
This
think
is
that
great.
this movie has that vibe to it, where it's really sad. This is, some people make this choice, but others are Maddie, and they're able to just like pave their own way. And I just think that was amazing when he goes to the friend's mom, and it's just like, save me
Tell
from
on me.
her, to tell on me. Or even the car when the dad says, "Isn't that for girls?" Like, he's not even scolding him. That's just his reaction to hearing it. Like, it didn't feel like a put down in some ways, if that makes sense. It just felt like an observation that he takes to heart. When he's sitting over the fire by himself, it felt very Are You Afraid of the Dark? But it felt like it was the first time he could like think to himself. I don't know. I could talk about this movie all day. I think this movie is truly incredible. Also, his asthma, like,
Yes.
like just nothing feels right. It doesn't go away. Also, like I even said to Jamie during the movie, we paused to go to the bathroom, and the time jump from 7th grade to like him being in 9th grade, and the way that he looked, I was like, that's actually
We're like, how old is he?
Yeah, it was
like in real life, because it was like we hadn't gotten that far in the movie yet, so it's just like, oh, this is like a weird choice that they're making, which then is like explained later. But like at first, it's super jarring. You're not expecting to see like someone who's almost 30, playing a 9th grader.
I just think that this is an example for me. This is an example of a movie that knew what it was, set out to do it with a great deal of intention, and then executed on every single level. I just was so impressed with this movie, and I could watch this movie 1,000 more times. My favorite quote in this whole movie, and you probably guessed it, is, "Do you like boys? I don't know. I think that I like TV shows."
Absolutely.
I love that. And her speech.
That line was so Brian coded that I immediately clocked it as it happened and was like, that's you.
That's going to be it. That's going to be the quote.
Yeah. Their awkwardness is so believable. Their conversations are so believable. Somehow this movie feels ethereal and grounded at the same time. And it's kind of a magic trick. I think that the other quote is, time wasn't right. It was moving too fast. I was 19 and then I was 20 and then I was 21. Like chapters skipped over in a DVD. I told myself, this isn't normal. This isn't normal. This isn't how life is supposed to feel. I'm going to like cry now because it was just like, what an immaculate script and direction on every level. I'll stop there. This is like, this was a transcendent film in so many ways. And I am a huge fan of this director and this movie. And I was just told this also felt, I don't know. I'll stop there. It was great.
That's all good. No, this is good. I do want to piggyback off of some of the things that you said, Brian, because I agreed with what both of you said about the jump from 7th to 9th grade. And that was something that I did put in my notes as a gripe until the very end. And so then my last thing in taking notes was that it was really awesome that it all came together, because now it's not a gripe for me anymore. Because they explained how time is weird. It's like, okay, well, I'm good. I just want to make a general statement that general statement always, and I always forget that you're going to say that, but this felt like a millennial's wet dream.
Yes, this was made for us.
It was made for us. This was a 90s fever dream that I was upset. That was the first thing that I wrote. I was like, I first off miss being a kid and mindlessly flipping through channels instead of like scrolling through social media. Just him sitting and just flipping through channels, I was like, God damn, this is I just is so nostalgic for everything about this. One thing that you didn't mention that I thought you would mention, Brian, is this soundtrack fucking slaps, dude.
This soundtrack is amazing.
Phoebe Bridgers is in this movie, has a cameo.
Yes.
And I was like, whoa, what's happening?
This movie's soundtrack is amazing. Oh, and something I want to add, and you might say this, so I'm sorry if I steal it from you.
It's fine.
I thought that those little snippets of like the full band playing really added to this movie's vibe, and also the lyrics they were saying just like really highlighted. I just thought that did sometimes that will slow a movie down. To
Yes.
me, that built this movie up,
Mhm.
and I was just like,
Well,
this
and
movie did things that don't work in other movies and works in this one. It's kind of amazing.
yes, I agree, because I thought that I would be annoyed with some of the longer snippets, but for some reason, it just kind of reminded me of like, one of those long music videos that tell a story. And it just felt like this
Mm.
entire movie was like one long, glorious music video with such great, like Brian mentioned, cinematography. And I fucking love the colors. The title card reminded me of Are You Afraid of the Dark? And I loved that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I put it's so emo and dark, but I love the combo of the darkness with the neon colors of this movie, like truly leaning into like everything about the movie is glowing. Like not just the TV, but like every single piece, every section that they go to, even things within the school, him walking outside, like it just all has this area of just like a glowingness about it. And I just really loved and appreciated all of that. Along the lines of like the tiniest of tiniest gripes, there were some times where I thought the dialogue was just a little bit too slow with the back and forth.
Okay.
Like I wanted them to not necessarily get to the point, but I just thought that the delivery of it didn't seem the slightest bit natural with how slow they were kind of communicating sometimes.
Like picking up cues type of thing.
Yes, yeah.
Mm.
So like just even when Maddie comes back and they're talking at the concert, and she's like about to tell him about the pink opaque, and which I also just love saying pink opaque. There's something about that mouth thing.
What a
The mouth
pleasure to
feel.
listen to.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, pink opaque. Pink
opaque. That mouth
It's
feel
all
is a good mouth
together.
feel.
All
Okay.
together.
Pink opaque.
Opaque.
Oh man, those poppin' peas.
Mhm.
Oh,
Those
And
man.
plosives.
Okay.
Those
Ooh.
plosives on my plips.
Yes.
Plan.
I just love it. But when they're talking about it, that exchange just felt a little bit slow in the delivery for me, because it just took me how slow they're talking back and forth to each other just took me out of it a little bit, because it just seemed a little bit not natural that you would wait that long to respond. Anyway, minor gripe. I loved that he's aging, but his coworkers don't. So like the ones that he works with at the movie theater that are like making fun of him when they're outside in the alley eating, those are the same ones that are in the fun house, whatever, his new job one. And he's like the only oldest one, but they kind of stay the same. And I just love that whole scene of everything still feeling so 90s, and like he's the one who's changing the balls in the ball pit and stuff, but he's getting older, and they've given us timestamps, which we love. So we know, like 20 years later, whatever,
He was in 2000, and so it was what, 96, then 98, then 20 years later. So like he was deep into the 2000s. Yes. But also I really like that his job was kid oriented, or just like this idea of like a stunted growth type of thing.
Yeah.
Also I thought the minor scene of him walking in on the boss,
like receiving oral sex.
Yeah, and walking into the boss receiving oral sex, and then the boss kind of like making a joke of like, I could put in a good word with you. You just saw his confusion, and things that he was trying to avoid are all up in his face in those moments, and that is Mr. Melancholy messing with him, including like, and his mom getting sick is him being distracted from that. And my question is, I wonder if when he's watching the finale and he puts his head in the TV and his dad pulls him out, like I wonder if like Maddie, the TV was that way, like in her backyard, like would that have, if he was able to go fully into the TV like Maddie did, would that have freed him? But his dad and what his dad thought and society and how he saw it pulls him back in, like whether or not that's like logistically like the narrative of this, like symbolically, that's totally what I got from it.
Yeah. No, I agree totally. That's exactly what I thought. Like, what would have happened if he fully got into the TV, and was that exactly the experience that Maddie had that led to her awakening, in a sense?
Nikisha, I want to add one thing based on what you said before.
Yep.
And this is going to come in handy next week too. So Jane Schoenbrunn, who wrote and directed this, they were born in 1987.
Mm.
And I say that because this was a movie about a specific time frame written by like a sweet spot millennial.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, this was a millennial movie written for and about millennials.
Yeah.
I want to just put that out there because next week when we get to Bodies,
Mm-hmm.
I think and just as a flash forward, I believe that next week's movie, Bodies, is a millennial movie written about how millennials view Gen Z, whereas this is how millennials potentially view themselves or see
Yes.
that. So I think there's an interesting distinction there.
Yeah.
I just want to get that out now because I want to bring that back next week when we're in the thick of it with Bodies, because I think that's an important part of these conversations, especially as three millennials right here sitting together, just
Yes.
about talking horror.
Yeah, because this was our lived experience.
Yeah.
And I think things hit, well, of course, things are going to hit different when it is your own lived experience or like a shared generational experience, right? As opposed to how you view, even if it was a millennial writing, like, you know, about boomers or whatever the case may be. Like, there's just going to be some different things because it's all in our own viewpoints of how we see the things, right? So I really enjoyed this movie. Oh yeah, this is my thing. I can now understand the time not being right and being off, especially with them trying to pass him off as a ninth grader, because of everything that happened. The most relatable thing for me about this movie were the TV shows, wanting to be a part of the TV shows that I watched when I was younger. So badly, and especially as an only child, and that was all that I had. Like, Brian, your memory of just the TV glowing, like that was my entire existence because I really did not have like anybody else. My parents were working, so it was only like me and my TV friends. Sabrina the Teenage Witch, I want to be a part of your world. Let me be your best friend.
Alex
Let
Mack.
me hang out in your room.
Well, Alex Mack.
Alex Mack.
I want to be part of Alex Mack's world.
Well, yes.
Brian's first crush.
Oh, big
really?
Oh yeah. Larissa Olenek. Have I ever told the? Have I told the story in this podcast?
You have not. I want to hear it now, please.
Okay, so I have two
Here's
stories.
some embarrassing Brian stories.
So the first one, I was at my friend's 30th birthday party in New York, and who walks into the fucking bar but a Larissa Olenek? Like,
stop it.
I did not know what to do. But like it's all in my head. Like what am I like? What are we talking about here? But I just like I do not get weird around famous people. I do like that is I keep my composure. I am totally this one. I just couldn't keep my shit together, and it was a 30th birthday party. But Larissa Olenek had been working on some piece of theater, and she was sitting at a big table with like the cast and crew or whatever, I don't remember, but somebody in my party knew someone at that table, so they started to talk to like the table and like the whole groups mingled. I left. I had to leave.
What?
I couldn't do it.
Brian!
I had to leave because I just couldn't. There was something about like I couldn't have her not like me. Like
I feel that.
Like I needed Alex Mack, who turned into a puddle of goo, to just be my first crush memory. If that makes sense, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like don't meet your heroes. Like just let it be. Let the imagination of them be in your brain. That's
don't meet your puddles of goo.
Don't meet your puddles of goo. So that was the first time I met her. The second time I met her,
Brian.
We went to see an off Broadway show. And it was called Baghdadi. And she was in it, but there was audience participation because you like go in and it's supposed to be like an FBI or CIA like coffee room, so there are donuts on stage. You're supposed to like mingle and like that type of thing. I sat in my seat and could not move, and if anytime she would like come over, I would just I couldn't handle it. And I'm not talking like I was like 23, like I was in my 30s.
and
Like,
just mute.
I couldn't do it. And I
Mhm.
am a very outgoing, personable
You
person.
are.
I will go up to anybody and say hello. I do not get embarrassed or weirded out at all. I couldn't handle my shit. I couldn't. And then we went to a bar across the street afterwards, and I was so distracted by the stage door, wondering if she was going to come out and come into our bar, like a crazy person. Not because I wanted her to, but because like I didn't know if I can handle it emotionally.
And you believe again.
Yeah, so that's my pure 90s, like I grew up on SNICK, whether it
Yes.
was like that stuff, Roundhouse, Are You Afraid of the Dark, all
Hey, dude.
that, Hey
Hey,
Dude,
dude.
Salute your shorts.
Salute your
Salute Your
shorts.
Short,
Yes.
like all of those TV shows, Pete and Pete. I know not all of them are SNICK, but
Yeah.
like all of that stuff. We were my sister and I were Nickelodeon kids through and through. We were not Disney Channel people.
Same.
Same.
Like we were Nickelodeon people.
Well, because you had
Ren
to
and
pay
Stimpy.
for Disney at that
Yeah.
Yep,
time.
you did.
And then I
That
even
was
remember
extra.
the commercials for Nickelodeon magazine, please. Like it basically was saying like, "Hey kids, ask your parents for this magazine." And my
Yes.
sister and I did, and we got it. Like, you know, like that type of like we would buy them. We were in like the Barnes and Noble and stuff like that, or the Borders.
Oh, yeah.
But like I would, you know, but like still, man. Alex Mack. And then when she was on Mad Men, I was like, "Oh my god, I can't."
Well, listen, if you meet her a third time, like you have to shoot your shot, Brian, because that's too many times that you have met your crush and have not said anything about that.
At this point, I'm just I can't even talk now. It's like this weird thing. Like it doesn't matter. The thing is, I know it doesn't matter. But like little Brian is just, I don't know. It's, you know, it's
you're
like,
protecting him.
Yeah. I don't know. Those two times, I a version of me came out that I did not recognize, and I think that was also a weird experience because I was acting like not me, and that was I think that was weirder than her, if that makes sense.
For sure, absolutely.
And I watched the Babysitters Club a million times.
Well, now that it's out in the universe, hopefully she'll come back to you and you're able to, you know, have at least a hi. I enjoyed such and such. Thank you for your time. And
Thank
walk
you for
away.
your time. Do you want to come on Broadwasted?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You were on Broadway. You did stuff. You did theater.
Anyway.
Yes. Well, just a few more things. I will say that I had to look up. I watched so many videos of the director, 3 videos of the director talking about this movie because, of course, there's so much symbolism and underlining of things in it, but I wanted to hear it out of their mouths of exactly what it was. And all that to say, people, if you had to do the same thing, that's okay. That doesn't mean you're not smart. You're just doing your research. It's all good. And I really enjoyed a lot of what they had to say about loving Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And so that's why so much of this is like coded in it. And one of the main quotes that they said that kind of closed the gap for me about this was that this movie is a cautionary tale of when those shows, the TV shows that we love, are all we really have to tether us to ourselves. And I was like, oh, that explains this so well.
No.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
That really hits the heartstrings.
It does. It really does. Because that is a lot of our upbringing, a lot of why we chose to do the things that we do professionally and, you know, how we operate in the world as because of these TV shows. So I thought that was a wonderful quote that I had to share. They also talked about how the film is about how we cope with repression, where it comes from, and to paraphrase, the quiet power of shame and how that shame can crack in a way that you can't hide from anymore, which I think is what we already, you know, kind of talked about, and Brian discussed that with how the ending was, and just accepting that this is the life that you chose for yourself and continuing on in that facade, as opposed to and kind of feeling like it is too late to change, right? Because, you know, us, when we get older and we think like, okay, this is how we're supposed to be, and how can I now move on from this, especially when I am at this age and have already created this life is so like foundational, you think is so foundational to you. So I just thought it was beautiful.
Yeah.
That you can't really like change the things. And like we've all said, the attention to the 90s stuff, the attention to detail was just so spot on with even just the hairstyles and the costuming of it all. And I just really appreciated all of that. But one thing I will say, no matter how old I get, I will always wear chapstick, because Justice, why were the lips like that? I understand the vibe.
Not possessed.
At
Because
least
that's
he wasn't
really the
possessed.
only rule of possession is your lips are the driest,
Chapstick.
crustiest lips of all time. That's how we as the audience know that something is afoot.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if ever in life you see me and my lips are just destroyed, know that there's something
is wrong.
Something's
Something
happening
is
in the
terribly
background
wrong.
that we
Yes.
need to investigate, whether it is a possession or
Mhm.
whether you're just not feeling yourself, and we gotta figure this out.
Yeah. But yeah, everything about it was just so beautiful. I didn't even really need people to talk. I just wanted to keep seeing images of all of the 90s flashback things. Like that, just that alone, it accompanied with the soundtrack, that alone just did it for me. So I thought this was a truly excellent movie. And when we talk about, high level things, I think, Brian, you hit the nail on the head. It's like they weren't trying to hit you over the head with what it was about, but of course there's a lot of relatable things and symbolism within it to where you can find something that relates to you in this movie, even if it's not specifically about the trans experience and stuff. But yeah, I just thought it was well written, but I loved it even more listening to the director talk about this movie, because then everything just full circle made sense, and
Yeah.
I just really appreciated it. So yeah, those are my likes and gripes. Jamie?
Yes, me. I
Yes.
also really like this movie. I feel like my brain has been like stuck in the glowing TV since watching it. Like I'm still processing my thoughts and feelings about it because it was so deeply impactful. And like it's really like wild and weird and wacky, but also like Brian said, like super grounded. And I think it's just there's something akin to like I feel like millennials and then like newer generations don't like feel this sense of like unease and identity that has continued. Again, like I think that there's a focus on the trans identity, but I think kind of what Nikisha was alluding to of just like I also feel like there's this millennials like feeling like they're doing adult things but not feeling like adults. There's like this stage that like there's an expectation of how we're supposed to be feeling doing things and not quite internally feeling that way. I feel like I'm a child trapped in an adult person's body, forced to do adult responsibilities, but my brain is like this doesn't compute for me, and like it's really confusing, and like that also feels very millennial, and like that I really identify with, and I think that's part of like the draw also to nostalgia, because we still really overly identify with potentially these like things from our youths and our youths and like what brings us like that childhood joy without like the burden of like adulthood and responsibilities, and also like the reality of the state of the world that we find ourselves in. So like being drawn to these past memories or experiences that like are freer and like less burdensome. I think that is all really captured by this movie. I think that as someone who is like really scared by like all of the SNICK offerings and like Are You Afraid of the Dark, I like still watch them, but like they also scared me. I had FOMO and I like needed to be a part of it, but like also terrifying. And I just remember the the discomfort that I felt watching those things when I was a kid felt exactly the same watching the scary melty ice cream man.
Oof.
And the creepy Mr. Melancholy's like close up on his face that's constantly moving and evolving, and like just these things that, like, again, it's not scary in terms of like a broken leg or like a man wearing a pig suit or I don't know, or murder, or like all of those kinds of things, but like there's something deeply disturbing. And I think I think really it's like if you watch these things probably at an age where it was slightly inappropriate for you, but you were still really captivated by it, it still tickles that same very uncomfortable bone in your body. And so it's like that's really what it's like evoking for me watching this, because I did watch all of those things and like shouldn't have been.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then they still really freak me out. So it's like it can just immediately tap right back into that same space and make me feel the same exact way that I did as a kid, which also is really interesting because it's like, wow, I'm like, once again, I'm feeling like this scared little kid inside my like fully adult person.
Right.
I think that like some of the themes that came up are in terms of like thinking about this from a mental health perspective are there's different like spectrums or not spectrums, but like there's a spectrum of like dissociation where like all of us, to some degree dissociate. We like kind of fall outside of what's happening in the present moment. But what I really feel like was captured in this very well was this one experience of depersonalization, which is like this type of dissociation where you feel detached from yourself. You're disconnected from like your thoughts and your emotions. You feel like you're watching yourself from the outside. And then the other one that I feel like it really captured is derealization, which is the idea that you're perceiving reality is not real. So like it feels like again, a perfect analogy is like it feels like you're watching reality like through the lens of a TV. It doesn't feel like you're living it. So both of those I feel like were very well captured in this experience. And I think that also speaks to like ultimately the dysphoria that Owen is experiencing in this movie, where like they're just not, there's just like so much tension between like anytime he's facing the reality, as close to the reality of his situation, he's terrified and like is trying to get away from it or is deterred from it for another reason. Like there's a barrier. And like I feel like all of these experiences, which are very like, mental health, human behavior coded, I just feel like we're really well depicted in this. Because I think it's really hard. And I do also think that, obviously a lot of these movies, not these movies, but like movies in general, don't effectively capture some of these experiences. Like
Totally.
we complain all the time about how poorly they deal with mental health. But I think you do kind of have to do something like this in order to have a greater understanding of like what this spectrum of dissociation feels like. What does dysphoria feel like? Like I feel like it's hard to kind of help somebody who has not experienced dysphoria before. Like if you've never experienced gender dysphoria and you feel like how you present aligns with like every part of you, the idea that there's any part of you that like has created this inner turmoil and conflict is so deeply distressing. And I feel like this movie captures that distress so well. And I think that it helps provide this like insight and empathy for people who don't feel that alignment, who like who do experience that distress. So I just wanted to say that because like again, I feel like it's hard. It's so hard to capture that in certain medias, and like we see it poorly portrayed all the time. So like I think that I would absolutely recommend this to somebody if they're like trying to understand what it might feel like, how somebody might experience dysphoria. I think this is an excellent example.
I feel like we should put together like a list of movies, horror movies that do an excellent job of explaining something,
like human behavior, like mental health,
related.
Like doesn't do it bad.
But it doesn't do it
Right.
poorly. Like if someone wanted to know about like gaslighting and domestic violence, I would give them the Invisible Man remake.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
Like I would put this movie in like a nice box set of like, do you need a movie to make you put you emotionally or at least empathetically in a place of something you may not understand fully? Like
Mm-hmm.
here's a list of films, and we'll have to like talk about this, but like to me, Invisible Man and this one would absolutely go in that set.
Yeah, I agree for sure. And something that
Yeah.
I think is needed, especially because Jamie, you were just mentioning that it's hard for people to empathize or even
I
really
mean, period.
understand. Yeah,
Yeah.
empathize. Period.
Yeah.
So having something in the context of media
Mm-hmm.
via a movie would be super nice. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think about that a lot. Like how to help people, like really how to help people like have empathy. And I do think again, people really struggle if they themselves have not directly had
Experienced.
that or a
Mhm.
similar
Yeah.
experience. Yeah. And it's
Mhm.
really hard to like explain to somebody why they should give a shit about someone else's experience if if it doesn't like relate back to themselves. So I think that like this type of media is so important because it does help people gain an understanding about something that perhaps they might not be living through themselves, but at least then they can understand how challenging it is for someone else and like
Mm-hmm.
just start to become more aware, start the
Mhm.
process of like learning or unlearning. But yeah, I think you named a lot of the visuals that I really liked. There's another part where like the I forget exactly what was happening. I think it was while Maddie was talking to him and the screen actually started to close in on his head.
Yeah.
And I really liked that. That with like the asthma, it's like this constant feeling of like I can't breathe, like I'm suffocating
Yeah.
because this is so overwhelming to me. But like then there's also the resistance of like I can't like follow through on this. Like there's just so much other pressure around like not being able to like seek out his true self and what was really going on. I think also there's like almost like a throwaway line where he is picking up his new TV and he's
Mhm.
like, "Oh, I have my own family now and like things are really great." And it's like, "Okay, I know this is like you're an actor and you're acting and like this part feels like so fake and bullshitty because it's so effective, but it's like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that sounds like someone playing pretend of like, yep,
Exactly.
everything's great. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to be doing and like that's
Which,
fine."
to add to that, I thought it was really effective that they didn't even show
Yes.
Yeah, you don't
any of
see
that.
Totally.
you don't see his
Yes.
family. Yeah,
Mhm.
like none of that. It's really just like the job stuff,
Yep.
which is also interesting because again, I think it goes back to like again, if you're viewing it from like a I'm doing all this adult stuff, but like I really feel stuck and like not while being surrounded in a space that's like surrounded by kids and like young people, like it's really disturbing.
Mhm.
And I also was like really disturbed by him having that meltdown at the end and then everyone just freezing. Like it was so creepy.
Yeah.
Just like
Mhm.
because again, I think like Brian said, is this really happening? I have no idea. It's like I'm questioning so much more now and I don't like that they all froze in that
Just
moment. Like is it
mhm.
like the simulation has stopped kind of thing? Like what is
Mhm.
happening?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just oh man, this is just like a really deeply impactful movie. Oh, also like it's you Brian also mentioned like revisiting stuff that's like not as disturbing or like you over hype it in your head with your like young person brain when you're a kid and then you like
Mhm.
revisit it as an adult and you're like "Ugh, now I'm embarrassed because like that was not that bad." But like also, I mean, again, because everything is wacky reality, like the fact that the finale is their hearts get ripped out and they
Yeah.
get
And they get
buried
buried alive.
alive, and then they're like forced to drink like poison. Like it's really fucked up. Like it's deeply, deeply disturbing. And like, yeah, that is some weird shit that like I'm sure Nickelodeon probably did, that like I probably buried in my, you know, subconscious deep, deep, deep. But like it's so scary.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
just still like, how did we watch this as kids? Like I like can't fathom. And yeah, ugh.
They exposed us so early on, and it's
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
it,
No
it just
wonder
kind of
we're
set us
fucked
up.
up.
No, well, honestly, I agree. I feel like it was a setup into like this is what the millennial experience is going to be, just like fucked up shit after fucked up shit, which is
Yeah.
truly have been our entire existence.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the scary thing about that too is like how it desensitizes you to things.
Yes.
And I think that's also part of the like you revisit something and it feels more childish because when you're first exposed to it, you're like vulnerable and young and like impressionable. And then over time, the more fucked up shit that you experience, it loses its impact, which is like this I think that's one of the scariest things about our reality is the
Mhm.
way in which we continue to be desensitized to extremely graphic, traumatic, violent, terrible, awful things that are happening all of the time. And like there's a variety of reasons of why these things are like constantly centered and like why we're consuming them. But I think that it's doing significant harm to our little brains.
Mhm.
And but I think that that also can, you can then read the later on revisiting something as like this isn't that bad because like now with my like adult brain that's experienced all this like trauma and bullshit, like of course these shows aren't scary anymore because
Mhm.
I've been through some shit. So I
Yeah.
think even that like just all like
And
separate from the embarrassment, it's just like
mhm.
no, but also like your relationship now to like revisiting this looks vastly different because like you have had a life's worth of experiences that have fundamentally changed your perception of everything.
Yeah. No, I agree. And we are now seeking out things that are like, what's the most fucked up movie that I can watch right now as a
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
fucked
recreational
up.
thing? And it's so funny you mentioned this whole thing, Jimmy, too, because that brought me back to watching The Boys. Also, if y'all haven't started this new season,
Oh,
my
we haven't.
God,
We haven't
I
yet.
it's fantastic. The Boys just never misses. That's just a blanket statement. But it just reminded me of watching that and being like, oh my gosh, because they have really intense fight scenes and throughout
yeah.
all seasons, and it's very gory, it's very graphic, and just sitting there, I was just so happy to just be watching it. But it's to your point, Jamie, of like I've just been so desensitized to everything else that it's kind of like this is just another Tuesday watching people's heads get ripped off, as The
Yeah.
Boys does.
That
Like it's wild.
honestly, that is a show that like for me is very much on the cusp of like I almost can't watch this, but I
Yes.
do think that the messaging is so important and like it's easy to look like there's also the line of like, you know, do I look away from this horrifying thing or like what am I supposed to take away from this? And I feel like that show is constantly teetering this line where it's like I it's just compelling enough to keep me in, but like
Mhm.
then something really awful happens and I just feel like actually physically sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
But I need to know that like they're gonna be okay. But like
Yes.
most of the time they're not. And it's just like it gets me right at that line and like
Yeah.
I'm always on the verge of like I don't know if I can keep doing this. It's
Well,
really disturbing.
Yeah, it's not only that with the physicalness of like seeing somebody get hurt, but just also how close to home it hits with like the current events and like cultural references. Like that too teeters the line of like, okay, I'm already living this reality. Like, why am I now watching this on my own time recreationally? When it's like this is too close to home. But I
Mhm.
get that. But all
Mhm.
this to say, it's still such a fantastic show. They're just so great. But yeah, do you have any more likes and gripes, Jamie?
No, I feel like everything has been said. I really enjoyed this. I have not seen Jane's other film, We're All Going to the World's Fair, and that like immediately got bumped to our have to watch
Oh
next.
yeah, we're watching that as soon as like the next moment we have to watch a movie. It's either going to be that or Godzilla -1.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, well let me know how it is
Yeah.
when you guys watch it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, let's move on to our next segment. Brains.
Mm.
Tasty.
Tasty.
Yes. Jamie, I just love that you mentioned dysphobia. Is that what was the
Dysphoria.
phrase? Dysphoria. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the other term that you said as well?
Oh, I said dysphoria, depersonalization, and derealization.
And derealization.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just walk? I'm just curious. I just want to know like the definitions of that again. Like,
Yeah.
can you just talk about that? Because I just think those are like such great phrases to encompass like what this is, especially in relation to like mental health.
Yeah. Let me find the Wikipedia definitions.
Yeah, just like a little blanket statement for the people.
Yeah.
/ myself.
Yes. So depersonalization is a dissociative phenomenon. So we talked about like dissociation and like it's a full spectrum that could be as little as like you spaced out, like kind of staring off into nothing and like kind of weren't really present in right now. So this is like another type of dissociation characterized by a subjective feeling of detachment from oneself, manifesting as a sense of disconnection from one's thoughts, emotions, sensations, or actions, and often accompanied by a feeling of observing oneself from an external perspective. So it's like you feel like you're outside of yourself.
Yeah.
Often, like, you know, dissociation, the spectrum can often be linked to like trauma, and depersonalization can often be a very common response to trauma, like as a crisis is happening where it feels like you're like outside of your body, like you're not like fully present. So that's depersonalization. Derealization is an alteration in the perception of the external world, causing those with the condition to perceive it as unreal, distant, distorted, or in other words, falsified. Other symptoms can include feeling as if one's environment is lacking in spontaneity, emotional coloring, and depth. And it's also another form of dissociation.
Yeah. No, yeah, I just thought that's so lovely, especially talking about Maddie, the character Maddie, and alluding to the maybe kind of dysfunctional family stuff, which makes sense that she would then in turn use the show and, be on that disassociation spectrum in that way. Which I also was appreciative that they didn't have to show any kind of like physical abuse with family or things. It was just like
I thought
tension.
the same thing.
Like that. We don't need to see it. There are so many other ways to tell us.
And I never and yeah, they just told us we didn't have to see it. That's it.
Right.
Great.
Yeah.
That's it.
I love that.
I know.
End of statement. So my question to you, Jamie, only because the character Owen brings it up himself, but he mentions that he feels that something's wrong with him and that his family feels like there's something wrong, or his parents feel like there's something wrong with him, but they can't, pinpoint it. So my question is there anything about his behavior in this movie that alludes to maybe there being a specific diagnosis that he might have, or is it just like the social awkwardness of being a teenager and like just growing up in the environment that he's growing up in?
Yeah, I mean, I think like around his parents, he's like pretty like seemingly mild mannered and like not like seemed very shy. Like there's that one point where he asks his mom to ask his dad on his behalf to do the sleepover. Like it seems like there's like a lot of anxiety about like talking to his dad. But like I don't think that that's necessarily like indicative of like some mental health related thing going on for him. I think it speaks more to like there's clearly some weird dynamic in this family and like he's really uncomfortable and like scared. And I also thought it was interesting that like he's lying on his mom's lap while having this conversation about like watching the show in the backseat of the car, and she's like petting his head, and that's like supposed to be him in ninth grade. And it was like very weird watching this like adult man get his head pet
Mm-hmm.
in this
Yeah.
woman's lap. But like he, even though he is presenting as like very shy and maybe an introvert, that he is like still has some kind of like interesting dynamic with his mom, because like they seem to have this like closer connection when he's younger. But I don't think that necessarily again is like any major red flags. I do think that
Yeah.
him approaching Maddie in the school, it was for election day, was that first time, I
Yeah.
think.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if anything, like even despite him being shy and introverted, there was still something interesting about like seeing Maddie, or like seeing what Maddie was reading, like something that drew him to her and like approaching her. So like despite being shy and introverted, he still like walked up to her and like struck up a conversation.
Right.
So even that is like, you know, it's there. I don't think that there is necessarily any like glaring red flags that
Yeah.
like something more problematic is at place. I think it's more of how he feels internally. And like
Mm.
he's saying that like he feels something internally off, and maybe is like, I think also if you're experiencing that, you're probably very hyper aware and thinking like other people must be seeing this in me. Other people must be
Yeah.
perceiving
Yeah.
me in this way. Like it's so top of mind and preoccupying so much of how you're perceiving yourself that you are also assuming other people are perceiving you in that way.
Yeah, I also want to
Absolutely.
say I really liked her like almost foreshadowing speech of how she like was talking about how the high school can change. One day
Mm,
it's a pep rally, one day it's a like they can change this inanimate object to be different things, which brings up
Mm-hmm.
the question like why can't I change myself to be a different thing that I
mhm,
feel that I am all the time. I just
mhm.
thought that was just another brilliant way of working it into every fabric of this film.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so interesting when you just think about how much we've been ingrained to stay a certain way in all aspects of life, and not
Mhm.
feeling like you can start over again or choose to do something else. And I know a lot of the times, at least like for us millennials, like it's a financial thing of like, okay, I need to stay in this job because like I need to be able to afford like whatever the case may be. But it's just always so interesting thinking like how much we think nothing can change about us really, or we don't have the freedom to, change.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, so my next question, Jamie, I would love if you could speak on the nature of TV shows becoming a way to disassociate from the world, and if when that can turn harmful.
Mm.
I can talk to you about that from personal experience. No.
Fantastic. Yes.
I mean, I think that like I don't think that on the surface that using not even just TV shows, but like books or video
Mm,
games, or like how content can be a helpful form of escape. I've talked about how like I love all of those things as escapism all the time.
mhm.
I think the where it might become more harmful or problematic is like, is this your like only way of coping with the things that are going on, and are you doing it all of the time and not dealing with the things that are going on in your life? Because
For sure.
those things aren't actually going away. You're just boxing them all up, but like they're all still there and like just under
Mhm.
the surface. And like the less you deal with them, the more likely these things are gonna like come up in inopportune times, or just like continue to be like persistently distressing or impact your functioning in some way. So like I don't think that like distractions, I think, get a bad reputation, but I
Yes.
don't think that they are objectively bad. I think it's more about like how and when are you using them. I think that when we're feeling like super highly emotional and overwhelmed, distractions can be very beneficial, because like when you're already at like a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10, doing some like really thought-provoking like processing is like probably not going to feel super effective. You're probably
No.
not even really going to be able to do it.
Sure.
But like if anything, it might just end up like causing more harm. So a distraction in that situation, I think, can be really helpful just to bring you back down to like a 7 out of 10 or like a 6 out of 10. And when you feel like you have more of a space to be like, man, that was some fucked up shit. Like, what happened? Let me like figure it out. Like, you have a little bit more space to actually like think on it, process it, address it in a purposeful way. And like that's where I would encourage people to like use therapy or like journal or other things that like allow them to really make sense of those experiences, but not when they're at like the 10 out of 10. Like if you're having a panic attack, that's not the time to like process your trauma.
Absolutely.
You're
I
just
agree with that a
it's just
million
not going to be
percent.
effective.
No, not at
Or
all.
you're going to feel worse. Like who the funk that 10 of the 10 could feel worse, but like here we are. So
Again.
yeah.
Here we
So
are.
yeah, I think that like, or same with like compartmentalizing. I don't think that
Mm,
compartmentalizing is like objectively a bad thing, but when you do it every single day at your job for 2.5 years, it's going to fuck you up. And I can speak from experience on that.
mm,
So that's why it's like finding other coping strategies, like a whole breadth of tools at your disposal to help you in those super intense moments and to help you when things aren't as intense and you feel like there's more space to actually like deal with some of the things coming up. Or if you can't deal with them directly, how are you coping with what's happening in situations that might be outside of your control?
yeah. I agree with that also from personal experience as far as being in therapy, but then being in the mindset of like, all right, I have the tools to now fix this right now, as opposed to just,
Totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
as opposed to just like letting yourself fucking feel the feelings. Like,
Yeah.
give me a day or two to like just do whatever the feelings say do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not harmful to anyone. Let me make that clear.
Yeah.
And then when I'm down from a 10 out of 10, I have the mindset and the bandwidth
Mm-hmm.
to then try and process everything, as opposed to being like, all right, well, this just happened right now. So now let me put on my therapy brain and figure out how I'm supposed to like process this right now because I can do that. I have the tools to do that. It's like, no, your brain's already full of all the other things. Like, you don't have
Yeah.
room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's like it doesn't, and trying to like push through all of that again like
Hmm.
is not necessarily going to be helpful or like help get you closer to the goal of like I want this to all like be better.
Yes.
It might make things worse. So it's like you really have to give yourself grace. I know we talk about self-compassion a lot, but like
Hmm.
self-compassion is truly a really big part of this, and being kind to yourself, like talk about empathy, like give yourself some empathy because like it's not all going to be resolved immediately, and like part of that is just like dealing with yourself in those moments of like I'm freaking out, like how do I deal with
Right.
just this, and
Yeah.
then maybe later on we can deal with like okay, why did I freak out, what actually
Hmm.
happened.
Right. What was the trigger? Go down
Mhm.
the list and figure it
Mhm.
out. No, that's great. And then my last thing, if we can just talk about the character Maddie and her, in a sense, like accepting herself and getting out of the town, and her trying to convince Owen, but he doesn't want to, join her, and just being that person who's trying to maybe help a loved one, a family member or a friend, and trying to process if they don't kind of want the help, and how to move forward from that. But also conversely, like Owen's character and dealing with like having someone help you, but like you're not ready yet to kind of like process these things out yourself. So can you just kind of talk about that dynamic
Yeah,
and just
I
like
mean,
processing that, how to move forward, I guess is my question.
yeah, I think that like it speaks to control and like what we have control over, and other people is not something we have control over. Even if
Mm-hmm.
you're recognizing where like somebody is really in need of support or help or like struggling with something, we can't make somebody else follow through on doing what they need for themselves. Like they really have to go through that journey on their own. So like
Mm,
even we in this situation where Maddie is trying to explain and like convince Owen of like what he needs to do in order to like, you know, find like realize that like they're in this like fake world and they have to go back to reality. He's still really resistant to it, and it doesn't matter that she like provided all this explanation and like the tools to get back. He has to want that, and like there's still things getting in the way of doing it at every opportunity that she's presented to try to accomplish that. So it's like in the beginning of like, I need to get away from here, I need to run away, like he bails, and then when she comes back and returns in his life, she's once again presenting like, this is what we need to do, we need to bury ourselves alive, and then like that will bring us back. He once again bails. So it's like it doesn't matter necessarily, you can provide all of the resources and support to somebody, but it's still on them to like, and again, like, it's the hardest thing is like that everybody has autonomy, right? Like you don't want to take somebody's autonomy away from them.
Right.
And so like that also poses a challenge when you're like, I can see that you're hurting, I can see that you like need this, but I can't make you do this. You have to want to do this. Like that's, and like there's not that much that I can do to make you do this. Even if I could, you know, if you're in need of like a therapy appointment, I can like do the research, find the therapist, send you all their phone numbers. I could schedule the appointment for you. I could drive you to the appointment. But like you might sit there on that couch and get like absolutely nothing out of that space if you're like, I don't need this. So it's really challenging when you see somebody who like does need that support, but we just can't, it's outside of our control to like convince somebody like of that same thing within themselves. It's such a personal thing that like they have the autonomy to decide that like that's important to them, and that and they value it and that they want it. And you know, we as outsiders like can't force somebody to do that.
Yeah. Which is always hard, but that is the truth of the matter. So
oh my god, I was gonna say the same thing.
Twinsies.
But yeah, I think like the person trying to give the help, that can be really frustrating. And I think it's helpful to recognize like how much we have control over that situation, and like recognizing kind of where the limitations are, because I think that helps us protect ourselves, because it could be really exhausting. And for the other person, I mean, that's like a self-awareness kind of thing, like their own journey and path in recognizing those things within themselves. And it might take them time to get there. They might fluctuate between like that insight. Like I think we see that in Owen, where it's like he is aware and then he's like running away from that awareness. So like really this ebb and flow of like having the insight and then like pushing it away. So it might be like a really kind of all over the place journey too. Sometimes people might accept the help and then later on be resistant to it. Like it's not always going to be this like consistent upward thing. Progress isn't linear. So it's really going to be like, you know, much more chaotic than maybe we're anticipating.
For sure. And that's a big thing too. It's just realizing that it's going to be kind of all over the place, but that doesn't mean that you're not like making progress along the way, even though it might, you know, be different at different turns, you know?
Yeah.
But, great. Fantastic. That's all that I have. Should we rotten tomatin this?
Yeah, let's rotten tomatin this.
It's the Rotten Tomatoes game.
Rotten tomatin.
All right, what do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes? Jamie, why don't you go first?
What do I think this has? I have no concept of how critics are like perceiving this right now.
Truly.
But I'm gonna go high. I'm gonna say 94.
Okay. Nikisha?
Coochie Kobe says 86.
84.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
And the audience score is a 71, but the critics' consensus is with a distinctive visual aesthetic that enhances its emotionally resonant narrative. I Saw the TV Glow further establishes writer-director Jane Schoenbrunn as a rising talent.
Mm.
I hate when they say rising talent. I was pretty talented.
Right.
If you
They
look at
already
me.
are
Boo,
talented.
Yeah.
you
Yes.
jerks. Shut up.
Yeah.
All right, what do you think this has on Letterboxd? And as a reminder, it's out of 5. Nikisha, you go first.
3.9.
Jamie?
4, 2.
3.7.
Why am I so wrong?
Um,
It's all good.
okay, so the popular reviews for this are just like long, like really interesting
Yeah.
conversation starters and whatnot. Some written by people who have gone through the kind of trans experience. But then there's another one here that just says Donnie Darko for they them.
Ugh.
Oh, man.
Oh, jeez.
Um,
That was going to be my suggestion.
oh,
Oh.
well, this review by BB spoiled it. Well, let's go to the 4 S's.
Yes,
Yes.
Skull, scare, shakes, and suggestions. The Talking Horrors 4 S's.
We've got skulls, scares, shakes, and suggestions. 1 through 10, skulls, how well this handled mental health and human behavior. Scares, how scary was it? And shakes, can you shake it off? Is this something that you will forget about? We'll see. 1 through 10, Jamie, why don't you start?
That was me shaking it off.
Shake
I
it
think
off.
That's
Yeah.
Or shake it like a Polaroid picture.
Oh, yeah. But you're not supposed to. That's bad for the picture.
I did hear that.
For skulls, I gave this a 9. Because of all of the gushing that I gave for what I think this movie represents and like how effective it is. I took 1 point away because of the like kind of magical realism of it all. Where
I
it's
love
like,
magical
okay,
realism.
you know, I love it, but also it's not real. So
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
For scares, I gave it a 3. I don't think this. I think that it's scary in terms of this like tension between like what is real. I think it's scary in terms of the images that it evokes from like childhood nostalgia, like scary TV show stuff. It's not like jump scare scary. I also think that the time like wackiness also is scary. It's like I'm running out of time. I'm rapidly aging and like or like I'm getting sick really fast. Like all of that stuff is like really scary. But again, it's not like overtly like jump scare terrifying.
Yeah.
So that's that. For shakes, I'm giving it an 8. Again, I'm still like processing and like making sense of this and what it means to me. But I think that this is a truly remarkable film. I'm not going to forget about this experience for like a while, and like this is another one that I'm going to be shouting from the rooftops that I think everybody needs to watch at least once.
For sure.
Nikisha.
Yeah, mine are similar. Skulls, I gave it an 8 for the same reason. Scares, a 2. And then shakes, I gave it a 7.
Nice. Skulls, I gave it a 9. Scares, I gave it a 4 for the same reasons. And then shakes, I'm giving this a 9. I thought this was just an incredible piece of art.
Just visually stunning.
Yeah.
God, so good.
Jamie, did you want to share more suggestions or just the one that you had?
No, I just had the one.
I've never seen Donnie Darko.
Oh my
Yeah.
god. I fucking love Donnie Darko.
I think
It's
you love it.
so
Yeah.
it's so
Okay.
good. I feel like it just like evokes the like someone else had like said that that's what it reminded them of, and it like as soon as they said it, it like shot a dagger into my body of like,
Yes.
oh my god, yes, like there's just so and like I think also seeing films at certain times in your life and like how it evokes a particular like thing
Mhm.
in you
Mhm.
very much was like when I saw Donnie Darko when it came out of like, oh my god, I'm so deeply impacted by this movie. Same with Garden State, but that does not hold in the same kind of way.
Screaming. Yes.
But like, you know, like those kinds of movies where it's just like, holy shit, like, and I
Yeah.
feel like there's also like a nostalgia aspect to Donnie Darko because it takes place like I think in the 90s. And it's also just like weird, ethereal, also really interesting soundtrack. I think you'd really like it, Nikisha.
Okay. I'll put it on the list to watch.
Do it.
Fun times. Yeah, my suggestions were just like all the TV shows that we had mentioned, which a lot of them are streaming. I forgot at one point, Are You Afraid of the Dark was streaming somewhere on an app that
Are
I
they on
did have.
Paramount?
Oh, okay.
Is
Yeah,
that
'cause
no?
they have all
I'm
the Nick.
asking.
It would
I
be if it
assumed it would be
was.
there. That
I think it is.
Nick, Nickelodeon.
Yeah. But also just talking about like movies that were visually stunning, even though this has nothing to do with like this kind of story type.
It's on Prime and Paramount Plus.
Oh, work. Okay.
Anyway.
Just a movie that was visually stunning that has stayed in my mind is Nope. Like as just far as like a latest movie that the cinematography was through the roof for me. So yeah, if you're just wanting something that's also just visually stunning, I would say Nope as well. What about you, Brian?
This is a weird one, but one of my favorite movies from the past couple years, Vox Lux. It's not similar, but it just gives off that same a very similar like melancholy weird vibe that this one does, with a banging soundtrack. So that's what I would suggest, Vox Lux.
We love a good soundtrack.
Also, the other movie, We're All Going to the World's Fair, because that's what I'm watching next.
Yes. Yeah, please report back about that. Excellent. Well, that wraps up our episode of I Saw the TV Glow. You can find us on all social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, at Talk Horror Pod. And Brian, where can they listen to us?
You can listen to us wherever you get podcasts, YouTube, of course. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Rate and review us there. 5 stars, please.
And
thank you.
What quote, Brian, should we leave the people with?
So there was a quote that I forgot in this movie,
Right.
which was, "It's like a secret agent sent her to make me miserable."
Oh,
I thought that was
yes.
a great line, because not only does that make sense for a high schooler, but like in hindsight, like, yeah, it was sent to distract you and make you miserable.
Yes.
But the real quote is, "I think I like TV shows."
Yeah. That is producer Brian times a million.
Oh,
This is
love
super
it.
exciting. Great. Well, thanks for listening, guys. Bye.
Bye. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.